And yes, I think we are live. Hey everyone, Flav here. Happy to have you for this new stream of the week for the Web3 Gaming on Tap. Usually, you know what I do. I love to take inspiration from the news I see in the blockchain gaming space, but also capitalizing on the BGA and the members and what I learn along the way every week. And to be honest with you, we were fortunate enough to have Pixelpai joining the BGA a few weeks back, and I really wanted to know a little bit more about what they do, the activities they do, and I really wanted to just share with you one of the tools they released. And I said, why not having the co-founder actually with us and explain what it is? And it was so nice to actually say yes, and I really appreciate it. So please welcome Morten Rongaard from Pixelpai. I hope you're doing well.
I am. Thank you very much for inviting me, Flav. And I know this was kind of like super last minute being organized, but that's what you do here in Web3, right? You need to jump
It
in
is.
when the opportunity is here. And and yes, so my name is Morten Rongaard, and I'm the co-founder of Pixelpai. As you can see on my gamer tag, my gamer tag is actually Fat Viking. So Danish Viking, full blown DNA, kind of going to this one. So yes,
I love it.
very very happy to be here.
Oh, I love it. That's actually a cool name. I can guess the kind of games you may like as well. That's cool. But
I'm very old, Fluff, right? So I'm coming from the age where I used to play a lot of Amiga and Commodore 64 and very, very early Age of Empires.
of
Like,
course,
I'm an old, I think a little bit competitive before we really went into esport, like
yeah.
Counter-Strike, all that
Oh
kind
yeah,
of thing, right? I've,
yeah,
I've been there, like, almost like feel like I've been through all the waves of gaming, right?
yeah.
So, but
And
but it
now,
also, but I am old. So
no, you're not. No, don't say that. You're not at well. You have a lot of experience, I would say. I will say that
yes,
for sure.
yes, yeah.
And that's really nice of you to say yes for this, because I do value the fact that we can explain what it is, try to educate about blockchain gaming as a whole, but specifically around a specific topic. Now we're going to talk about
Yes.
compliance, which is not an easy topic, and having you explain that better than I could do. I think it's super cool. So first, I would love you to give you the time to explain what is Pixelpai, what is the vision, the company, and after that we'll go into the NFT monitoring tool that I would
Yes.
like to show.
Yeah. And just to give you some background, kind of like born into Web3. One thing is that I'm old and kind of in gaming, but I was kind of like born into this whole Web3 blockchain space, discovering Bitcoin back in 2013, early minting, kind of like or harvesting Bitcoin with my ASIC miner back then. My wife hated me like the plague because it was making so much noise. And then for the sake of or the sanity of the marriage, she said it's either you close it down or we are not gonna be married anymore.
Oh my
So of
god.
course, of course, she won. And I closed it down, and then she's now regretting very much and saying, "Why did you listen to me?" Right?
Yeah.
So luckily I won a little bit, but I also lost a lot of money. But actually, the reason why I went into this was I was so intrigued about suddenly any kind of transaction was now visible for everybody on the planet, right? There was no hidden anything, everything was transparent, but I really couldn't figure out how to develop on it. So it wasn't until the ICO of Ethereum back in 2014-15, right, where basically smart contracts, this was really where it kind of like hit the nail. Like, this is so interesting. Like, any kind of asset can now have our own digital identity and can be traded. And for me, that was my way into gaming. Even though I was born into gaming, but it was really kind of like, where do you get this mass adoption the quickest way? So this was through gaming, as I saw it, right? With more than 3 billion people gaming, it will be natural for implementing something like this into it. And then I actually back and forth had ideas. I used to had a web, not a Web3, but a marketing and web studio back then. a company that was building websites and complex kind of like other features and functions. But then I was kind of like, okay, I need to maybe start a gaming studio, and I started that gaming studio. It was called Reality Gaming Group back then. Did our own first IP augmented reality first point shooter mobile game, right? And we were actually the first company implementing ERC20 assets into that game that will then could come into was in App Store, and actually you could buy and trade assets outside of App Store without paying them 30%. So we were actually the first company way back. That was before it was called ERC 721. So kind of like very early into this one, and co-founded that together with my co-founder Tony Pierce, who's a mobile games veteran in this space, and together with a third co-founder, Torben Meigard, who actually owns Siglum but sadly died a few years ago. So we kind of like started this whole Web3 gaming studio, and quite quickly taking our initial IP and then moved into, I would say, AAA gaming and big brands like BBC Studio. We were the first company working with Web3 and proper data from the FIFA matches in the last two World Cups. Pro cycling, you name it, we built there. We built NFTs, we built the monetization and the new strategies and all that new kind of like ways of how you actually were implementing blockchain into the space.
And Doctor, you work for a very famous IP in Great Britain, which is Doctor Who as well, because we know Tony Pierce is part of. Yeah, that's
exactly.
cool.
Yeah. Like I said, that was way back when we developed that kind of like initial strategy and actually the initial concept around how do you build the NFTs in, but also making sure that it was inclusive so everybody could actually have a part of it and not just being a pay to win game, right? So you really needed to build something long term and sustainable. But then what happened was that then from like 2 years ago, I really saw like how the NFT space was both maturing but also was changing, because now what happened was that any kind of game was now becoming open economies because of Web3, and slowly it was moving, maybe not moving and getting the mass adoption as quick as we wanted it to be or hope for, but it was still changing because what I call traditional Web2 games were struggling with user acquisition, high cost, all these kind of like natural things, and suddenly this new concept with owning your assets, which for me was natural. Like, I actually expect when I'm buying something, I'm also, this is my property, right? But that was not what kind of like the narrative that was out there. And I think there was a lot of big pushback for NFTs and all that because of, you could call it from the more from the environment angle, I think so, and kind of like all that kind of like consensus modeling, which suddenly was just blurring up. But what I saw was that these games were now becoming open economies, and especially with regulation moving in, because now it was becoming financial. Like you could now trade, you could swap money in and come out, and these cryptocurrencies and all these kind of things that was happening. So I saw the need for creating a platform that actually kind of like took me back to where I saw what we started in reality. Suddenly we were building new epic stuff directly on chain. So we need to have in-game or in-house capabilities for, let's say, Solidity for that kind of contract. Suddenly we also saw Solana was coming out. Then suddenly we needed compliance people. We suddenly need this, and this. And suddenly our team was not just a gaming company, but actually what I call a full in-house kind of like team with compliance and financial people and all these kind of things. And I just said, okay, there is actually a need, because 90% of all the studios in this space in games don't earn any money. These are small indie studios, smaller game companies that doesn't understand this new technology. So it's a big kind of like blocker for them. Technology wise, how do I double down on one network? How do I make sure it's also here the next 5, 6, 10 years, whatever it is? At the same time, I also need to understand compliance, because now MiCA was coming in, which is the market for crypto assets. Now suddenly travel rule. Suddenly there were so many kind of things that me as a studio owner needed to understand and comply with. So I said, maybe this is where there is an opportunity to actually, as a new platform dealing with all this, and just let the studios be creative. Don't worry about the hassle with that. So I fired myself as a CEO for my own startup and saying that guys, I'm stepping down. Tony, you're going to take over. You're going to do it brilliantly, because again, we should just be creative and should just be a gaming studio. And I will start on this new startup. And this is where Pixelpai was born, with a compliance mind in kind of like a mindset, right? Because we wanted to remove that burden away from the studios. But at the same times, we also wanted to make sure you can get a bank account, you can suddenly get access, pay in, pay out, because it was really easy, or not easy, it was easier to get into Web3 and to crypto, but it was actually a nightmare getting out again, because then your bank would say, oh, you're money laundering money, you're doing this, all that, because they don't understand it. And we actually wanted to build a platform that was removing all that hassle, that could prove a source of funds. You have now put $100 in, but you're taking $10,000 out. Like, how is that actually being managed, so you don't have this kind of like issue with your bank and so on? So we have built that whole platform, and that's actually what Pixelpai is all about. An all-in-one platform that is covering the infrastructure, the technical infrastructure. We are right now covering 50 protocols. You can mint on whatever, all the natural kind of like Solana, Ethereum, Polygon, Arbitrum, Base, and so on. We're covering basically 50 right now. Then you have a finance hub, which basically is giving you a financial embedded infrastructure. So you get your fiat accounts, you get your crypto accounts, you can move on money in, you can swap easily and actually understand it from a traditional, what I call financial controller perspective, what is actually going on in my system. And then, of course, everything around the compliance hub, where you understand your risk distribution, you understand actually, oh, I have an NFT collection, but something is happening behind the scenes that normally I wouldn't be able to see, as we also going to go through. And basically just helping them getting more clarity and transparency in what is going on in Web3, so they don't have to worry about all the shady stuff that can happen, which is maybe out of their control, but now giving them the control and the insight of that one. That was a very long explanation, but sorry for that. But it is a very complex. It's a very complex aspect, but it's what is needed for the next evolution of Web3 and blockchain gaming.
And the platform comes from your experience as a gaming studio, helping a lot of brands, also developing the creative aspect of developing also different games into the blockchain. And you wanted to make it easy, because it wasn't maybe easy for you. It wasn't easy for you to actually begin with something around security, around compliance. That you actually wanted to make it easier for anyone who would like to be
exactly. And also just from a finance perspective, like having from a management perspective, I would say, right? Understanding how much money has come in, how can we easily get, if I'm putting in Ether in, how can I swap them over and get USD out or Euro out or pound out or whatever it is, right? But it's more like the natural kind of like you as a studio, how you're gonna navigate in a space where you have tech, you have compliance, and now you also have finance, and really try to make this as frictionless as possible. That was my kind of like my way into this, and really try to simplify it. So, because I know a lot of the founders, I know the struggles you're having, giving that transparency, but also giving the assurance that you can sleep well at night, not kind of like worrying about all these kind of things.
I love it. And that would be interesting to go through a different aspect of the platform. Obviously, on this one, it's going to be around the compliance, which is actually a big thing, because we talked about that specifically in our 2023 report, a little bit less in the 2024, but still the fourth biggest negative impact for our ecosystem, blockchain gaming ecosystem, according to the last one we just released 1 month ago, was a lack of visibility in terms of regulatory, not just in one country, but actually all across the globe. So it feels like it's a very important topic, and be able to rely on a platform like yours actually make it a little bit easier for them, because it's not just about, so you're very well involved in MiCA, but I guess also maybe helping compliance on different territory maybe as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Because again, working in Web3, right? It's not about just you launching in a specific country. Your assets will now move across digital borders, so it can move from Japan to Europe to Australia to suddenly, somebody in North Korea is interacting with your smart contract, right? Or your product, and suddenly, how do you actually navigate this and actually making sure what can I do or what can't I do, and understand that from a regulatory point of view? Because in Denmark, this could be seen as a utility, but in other countries it could be a security. How you're going to navigate actually around that one, that is so complex, and this is exactly why Pixelpai is solving that whole thing for them, so they don't have to worry.
Okay, define as a utility in Denmark. You always were the most brilliant people of Europe, I guess, because some of the other countries still think it's a security for some reason. But
no, I think if I lay this, I wouldn't give that credit. I think it's more like the ecosystem itself, because we have just had the whole battle with crypto and tax payments, right? How suddenly we would be tax
don't tell me about it.
Which we had to push back, right? So the ecosystem actually works here in Denmark, even though it's small. It actually works, and sometimes I would say knowledge works over stupidity, just to make it very frank. So,
sure.
Yeah.
Should we go into details for the NFT analyzer? Okay.
Yes.
So I'm gonna switch my screen right now, and we're gonna go through it. So obviously, if you're on the website, you just need to click on the NFT analyzer, so pixelpai.com, and you have the NFT monitoring tool. So do you want to briefly explain?
I can just briefly give exactly.
Yeah,
so this is a version 1, because one of the things that I've always been quite annoyed about in this one, right, was that I was missing a tool to understand when I'm going into OpenSea and I'm going into all these sort of kind of like marketplaces, is that it's just giving me what I call basic information, like how's the trade, how successful is it, all these kind of things. So we have been working and actually now getting more than, and I'm just looking over on my technical director, I think we have more than 350 million data points right now, and almost like 1.7 million NFT collections that we have gathered the last, I think, 8 or 9 months now, data on, and really try to analyze and finding out which one is actually good, bad, fraudulent, all these kind of things, and implementing now the compliance and rule set, identifying and giving collection owners an insight in, from a regulatory point of view, how is this seen from wash trades and what kind of patterns and all that. So this is a version 1, just to make it very, very clear to begin with, a very basic starting point for actually you get some kind of insight, which we are now implementing the next version of, and actually even more advanced risk distribution and rule sets and stuff like that. So this is very, very basic.
It is basic. It is simple to understand, but that's why I really wanted to talk about, because I feel like when you actually start to think about Web3, especially if you are in the gaming industry, you want to rely on something which is easy, and actually that's the case. So I would need your help to define a little bit some of the terms you're using, because they are very interesting. And so going into details, you go to the NFT analyzer, and I did the thing myself, having a specific example with one of our members, which is Dogami. Most of you know, obviously, and you have a little bit overview of the collection. We're going to talk about the collection on Polygon, and obviously it's on Paul here, but it's on ETH here. But I'm not going to go into detail for this kind of data, if it's okay, because that's the kind of thing you could see on OpenSea as an example. But the real value of the data come from the report itself that you can analyze here, generating a report, and you have it here. So we're going to go through it, and again, you have a little bit of an overview of the Dogami token launch, not token launch, the NFT collection, explaining what it is, the floor price, the market cap. And the first thing I would love you to help us understand will be the risk score. So we have a risk score of 103% above average for Dogami. What does it mean? What should we understand based on what we have and what we see?
Exactly. So basically, taking from a regulatory point of view, the benchmark in kind of like Web3 and gaming and assets in general is what we have calculated is 40, right? That's where we see, like, this is where everybody should be kind of like try to kind of like aim to be around this kind of like rounding, right? But again, the problem is you have no idea about the people and your community who is now starting to engaging and buying your assets. You have no idea if they are pumping up the price behind the scenes, if they're doing wash trading, all these kind of things, which basically we can detect with how we analyze the blockchain data. So basically, it's all the data that we have compiled, putting it in through our compliance engine, and then we have I think right now, we have like 12 rules that just for this one that we are measuring, or actually maybe it's actually less, but I think in the next one it's actually 14 we're having. But to take it very basically, so we are saying that where are you with wallets and the different kind of rule sets within wallets? How are you within transactions, and how are you within user behaviors, right? So these kind of rule sets will trigger and give basically a score that we are then compiling, and we give the whole mythology how we have calculated this in the basic version 1, right? But then it's giving you an indicator saying that you are actually now more than 103, you're 103% above that average because you are 81. So the average is 40, you're 81, meaning that you are 103 above the average. So this is the first step. The next step in our version 2 will come also, and our version 3 will come. Okay, now this is identified, but then how can I actually also reduce my risk now, right?
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. That will be interesting to come back to this version 2, because that's what will have been the question, obviously, to say you are 103% average. What does it mean, and what could you do about it? So that will be interesting to follow up. But based on something you actually picture very well, which is what we have below, and you talk about that, it's analyzing the wallets. We're actually interacting with who bought the different NFT collection that we have here, but also analyzing the type of transaction coming from the buyers around these NFT collections. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. And if we focus on the wallet specifically, you scan all the wallets, and what you have suction wallets, but also wallet alerts. And I would like you to explain what it is, but also explaining what we have below, because you picture the wallet activity, both activity, obviously that's super important, and I love this number because it means a lot if you have so many bots interacting with your NFT collection, but also inactive wallets. Would love to learn more about what does it mean for you, and the wallet sanctions, if you can explain as well.
Absolutely. So basically, me as a collection owner, I need to have that kind of insight, because you need to understand, first of all, okay, you can see that how many assets have been sold, again, how many wallets have interacted. Yes, you could see that maybe on OpenSea, but actually from a management point of view, you maybe want to have your report generating that whole thing, looking at a collection, say that, okay, we have now scanned 473 wallets. There's no sanctioned wallet, meaning that we are checking up against sanctioned wallet lists, saying that, okay, we need to make sure that none of the people who has interacted with your collection is actually on a sanctioned list, because we don't know the identity of the person, but we can see if your wallet has been somehow, let's just say on the dark web, or has been sanctioned at some point, whatever it is. You would like to know that as a management, saying that, oh, why do we suddenly have, let's just say that this was suddenly 10%. Why have we attracted 10% or 10 sanctioned wallet into our system? Is there something we can do? Is there, maybe it's going back to a marketing campaign, maybe it's somebody we've interacted with. So it's easier for them to break down, why is this suddenly this thing? In this case, there's no sanctioned wallets. And of course, there is, in this case, 79 wallet alerts, meaning that we have detected that in the rule set that we have defined in our wallet section, we have now got 79 alerts, meaning that some of these rules have been triggered depending on what the definition of that rule is. And of course, then you have some wallet activity, in this case, 20% active wallets, which is within a certain period of time. We have said this is actually an active wallet or not an active wallet, because that can also be across other collections, etc. Or it can just be, in this case, we would say maybe it's an inactive wallet because it's just being used to a little bit of wash trading. It can be used to so many, we don't see it, but we can only see the rule sets that we have set up behind it. Because it could be me setting up multiple wallets, quickly do like an airdrop. It looks like I'm sold out. It looks successful. So from a consumer perspective, it looks like, okay, this is super cool. But suddenly 79% of inactive wallets is not super cool. So how can I either activate them? And this is where our platform is going to give you some of these opportunities moving forward, right? But right now it's just identifying you. And also the bot activity, you need to understand suddenly, okay, but some of these rules that we can identify, this is not normal, because we have all heard it. We've been in this space for so long, right? So we know that a new collection is coming out. There's an airdrop. We know that that scammers or people with fraudulent intentions, I would say, is coming in, have set up a script, and basically they're just running the bots and suddenly taking the airdrop in that whole case. We can now see that the behavior that they're doing is not natural. This is not a human behavior. This is a bot behavior because of certain triggers, and we can identify that one.
Yeah, we're going to talk about those behaviors because you go into a little bit detail during with this one. I see a marketing opportunities here because you said 79 inactive wallets, which could be seen as an untapped opportunity, which means maybe capitalizing on those 80-ish inactive wallets and doing some marketing activities to reactivate them and maybe suggest something on another collection or try to interact a little bit with the game. Do you see that as something possible?
100%, because this is exactly what actually, just to take you back, what we actually did for FIFA back in reality when we did it. Because my thing was what we're saying to them is that now the marketing game is changing from Web 2 to Web 3. Because now it's more like privacy protected, all these kind of things. But imagine now that it actually doesn't matter if you know that this is Morten or Flav actually, now that we have the details of him, but we do know that we have a wallet that has interacted with my brand. I now have an NFT or have something that can actually now give me an opportunity to reactivate you and try to figure out how can I then make you an active user instead of an inactive user, right? Because I know you've interacted with my brand. That's actually the most important thing. The rest is purely marketing and rethinking how we do marketing in a new manner.
I love it. That's super interesting data. And you talk about that. So suspicious wallet activity means specific behaviors, and you have some types of alerts. Can you give a little bit of definition of all of these types?
Yeah, I can. Some of it, of course, we don't want to give away the secret sauce too much, right? But of course there is some kind of like, if you see let's just say the structuring, right? If we can see you have done a large transaction or multiple purchases more than, let's just say 10,000 euros over the last 24 hours, we would say, okay, you are in a regulatory mind, you are now triggering something that is suspicious, right? Because that's not maybe normal behavior. You as a consumer would have that amount of money to spend in 24 hours across all this. But turning it around from an entrepreneur point of view and a marketing, I would really love to have these kind of users in my community also, right? So it's not because it's only negative in that way, but from a regulatory point of view, it is suspicious that you are triggering X amount of alerts. And this is just in one collection. It can also be in multiple collections that you suddenly, it's 10,000 here, 10,000 here, 10,000 here. You as a management would have no idea. You would see it as a super positive thing. Yes, you've spent money, but also maybe you need to mitigate that risk in a certain other aspect. And maybe you need to kind of like, how can I protect my system and how do I deal with this user suddenly that is a high spender, but maybe he's also triggering SaaS reporting, these kind of things that will come in, especially with financial transactions, right? Where me as a studio can be forced into, how do I report this? Where suddenly I have a consumer, how do I do in enhanced due diligence or source of funds and these kind of things, because I suddenly need to comply with the regulation around this space. And this is really hard when you just have a wallet address, right? So these kind of things is going to be I would say the new daily day for a lot of Web3 gaming studios. Not because I want to say that we're making it simple for them, right? So it's not because we're trying to make it super complex in that sense. We're actually trying to remove the friction and remove a lot of the frustration for them. But they need to comply with regulation because now it's becoming open economies.
Yeah, more and more important. I agree totally. And when you explain a little bit the differences between rapid movement of assets and high
rapid movement, yeah, exactly. Rapid movement assets, right? Very quickly. If you suddenly see actually one wallet and the same asset is now being moved and not being traded, but moved around in multiple wallets, that for us is triggering certain kind of like, okay, you are now triggering what we would call a suspicious wallet activity, because why are you moving an asset from here to here to here to here?
Yeah.
So that could be either because phishing attacks and stuff like that, and suddenly you have moved it around, or it can, and this is going to be expanded not only to NFTs but also token eventually, right? So it's suddenly kind of like laying the groundwork for these kind of things. So there are some triggers and high frequency transactions, frequent transfer traders, and bot behavior and some of these, right?
Yeah.
So we have certain rule sets where we are saying, okay, this is actually very suspicious, because why would you do this if you had pure intentions, right?
Yeah. Love it. And as you said, having a suspicious wallet activity and having a view on the suspicious wallet activity is not bad, it's not good. It's just having an overview of what it is and how you could actually do something about it. Sometimes you just need to be careful. So it really helps you to picture the kind
exactly.
of...
Yeah, and especially this one where you have a benchmark, right? Because
Yes.
in this case, you can see Dogami is actually in large transaction lower than the benchmark. So it's not because this is actually bad. It's about making the transparency and making it transparent for the studio, saying that, okay, it's cool that the system is detecting that there is alerts. I'm being notified there's alerts. That could be cold alerts and hot alerts, right? So some of them are actually more important than the other ones. But in this case, we're just saying you have large transactions. We have identified that in the system. That doesn't mean that this is bad.
Yes.
Because compared to the benchmark, you're actually below that one.
Yeah.
So you're doing good, right? So it's also making it, I would say, make that kind of like transparency for the studios is super, super important, because otherwise they would just go into OpenSea and they would have no idea.
Yeah, agree. Wonderful. Love this one. And we talk about that. You also have an overview about the transaction and type of transaction.
Yes.
Same thing for this one. We'll love you to explain a little bit specifically what I personally super interesting in understanding a little bit more is the currency distribution. I feel like that's super important, but you will be far better than me to explain why. So if you can go into detail of everything you see here.
And it is actually super complex, because in any collections, collections today, when we look at the data, and also this is also where we learn a lot. Like I'm saying, we're still not super experts. We're still trying to break down and understand a lot of this data, right? But what we can see is that different assets is being traded in different currencies, and we're trying to break that down and understanding, okay, if you from a management, again, you would like to understand, my collection, where is actually maybe my audience, how is this normally being traded? Do we see suddenly a spike in Bitcoin transactions as a currency being, trading in this collection? And maybe we can then go back to, again, some of the marketing activities we have done and understand, okay, this is actually super valuable, that kind of like campaign we did back then, because this is where we have brought in a lot of new trades or a new audience, all these kind of things. And this is where we really want to kind of like learn even more in a version 2 and a version 3 as we expand on this on this NFT analyzing part of it, right? But for me, it was super interesting also from what I could go in, because I'm kind of like a little bit native in this space. So I could easily break down, Etherscan and some of this and understand from a collection, okay, we have approximately some of this and coming in ETH and some in Bitcoin and so on. But going back to, I also will have a normal, what I call a Web2 accountant coming in and do my bookkeeping in my company. She will just look at me and just say, what is this? Like, yeah, I can see some money is coming in and it was traded in 0.1 Ether. What was the USD equivalent value at that time? Because I need to bookkeep that into my system and so on. So there's a lot of what I call, yes, this is Web3, but we also need to interpret it and convert that into what I call Web 2 and traditional, real world kind of like understanding, because you still have Inga on 60 years old who comes in and do your bookkeeping. She would have no idea where to find the value of Ethereum at that day, right? So there are some what I call natural things, and we wanted to break down the currency, and we also wanted to break down the transaction, saying that in all the transactions we have scanned, we have found 2 bot behaviors. In this case, there's 4.52% of suspicious transactions based on the 49 transaction alerts that we have identified that is related to the rule sets around transactions. And that, again, doesn't mean that this is super bad and all these kind of things, but it tells you that, but in general, your whole collection from a wallet activity and, again, transactions activity, so on, you are still above the average. So there is something going on in your collection that might, this is just historically, meaning that you cannot change it now, but in the future, what can I do in order to maybe prevent this and actually lower my risk? Because again, consumers will come in and find these kind of things. It's also a way for them to do their own due diligence moving forward on a collection, and suddenly it's becoming what I call much more just transparent for them, so they can actually take their own, I'll say, qualified decision if they wanted to buy an NFT in this collection or not, right? Because they can see that this is actually a legit collection.
Let me know if I'm very far away from what I should understand, but when you talk about currency distribution, I immediately, and you may not have the granularity of it for now, obviously, and totally understandable, but I see that as an opportunity, especially with what's going to happen, in my opinion, in 2025 around meme coins and gaming, because it's part of the culture. And I feel like meme coins, a part of them, will be tied to the gaming ecosystem because it's how you engage with your community the best way. And when you actually launch something NFT collection within a specific ecosystem, and you feel like you would like to tap into communities like meme coin, having an overview of did the buyers actually use meme coins to buy your specific collection, and what part of it was it Pepe more than Doge? I feel like it's huge information. So I don't know if it was a purpose or if you see that as something interesting, but that's what I understand saying that.
Yeah, 100%. And this is exactly where we are expanding to, right? Right now, it's about taking it in chunks and making it digestible for a lot of people, because you suddenly introduce them to something that is completely new, and compliance is never the most sexy part to introduce, especially not when you have a lot of anarchistic kind of like behavior in this space, right? Where you want to disrupt the whole thing. And I've been there, like I am still there, right? But I also understand that compliance is actually not bad. You actually need that in order for now you to evolve and build the next evolution of Web3 gaming, right? So definitely we know it. We are already working very, very hard on both the currency, but also you could say interoperability and so on, right? You know, how do you move assets across? And suddenly, you know, if you want to deploy your game, but like via our platform, we will now have the opportunity to deploy it across multiple chains at the same time, right? And how do you navigate with assets moving in and paying in this protocol and this protocol and with this kind of like, currency and so on? And in order to orchestrate that is super complex. So that's why we also need to understand it from, you know, the 360-degree angle, right? You know, and especially meme coins is I feel your passion for that one, and I have the same one. I share the same one. I'm very, very interesting to see where are the gaming companies, the creativity, where they're going to push this beyond, right? You know, and that I really just want to make sure that I give them the tools, and that's why I want to co-create as much with this community as possible, in order to make sure we will support you at, you know, we will be the, what I call the creative compliance partner on the side, right? Because we don't want to restrict you, but we actually want to give you the tools so you can, you know, take this, you know, far and beyond, right?
I have to be fully honest with you and with everyone. Like, it took me a lot of time to understand the value of meme coins, and I don't have any, but I do see now how the nature of the community behind some of them. Obviously, have a lot of problem in this ecosystem, and need to be very cautious. But I really changed my mind around the meme coin ecosystem on that part. So you might be more like a believer than I am, but I do see the opportunity for gaming for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
No.
if we go to the to
Yes.
this one, the suspicious transaction activity, what could you say? What
You could
would
say
be
it's a little bit of the same as you saw up here, as you can see, right? It's kind of like using some of the same terminology but there's a different rule set behind it in the transactions itself, right? And this is where we really go down, like you could say high frequency transactions. If we could suddenly see more than 50 transactions within 24 hours from one single wallet, you know, that will trigger something where we're saying, okay, this is not, again, normal behavior, unless we're saying that there's a certain kind of like things in it. Because if it's just within a Web3 game where you're kind of like paying back and forth and do these kind of things, we will be able to detect that. So it's really trying to break down and understand the use cases of each of these. But from a transaction point of view, and again, going back to a regulatory point of view, saying that we have no idea, because you're not KYC, you're just a, you know, like a non-custodial wallet coming in, you're coming in with your MetaMask, we need to make sure that you as a studio actually have the tool set so you can identify good or bad, hot or cold. This is alerting. This is an alert. You need to be notified. You're seeing all these ends in your dashboard that we have provided for you, right? Saying that you have triggered this alert, this type of alert. Some of these alerts, which we are going to do, and this is where we're going to maybe differentiate a lot, using our platform, we are going to help you deal with the reporting behind the scenes. So for the financial regulators, we are going to handle the whole reporting automatically, so you don't have to worry about it, because just because it's being alerted, some of them are cold, some of them are hot, but some of the hot ones, you now can risk being shut down. And that's why we want to, first of all, be the one that is helping you, making sure you report on time. You don't have to deal with this complexity on the whole compliance part. And again, we will have the licenses to do it, because just to cover that quickly with Mika and some of these licenses that you need, that will require regulatory capital. And just for you as a studio, even as a small studio operating in a Web3 world, that means that minimum €1 million is going to be tied up in regulatory capital for the licenses that you need in order to operate legally.
Crazy.
And that is now gonna basically just gonna take so much, and basically just gonna kill innovation, right? And that's exactly why Pixelpai was born. We want to be helping, and not saying that the 90% of studio who's already struggling actually earning money, why make them struggle even more? Because they don't have that kind of money, and we just want to give them the tool sets and all that, and saying we're onboarding you, we are making sure you use our license and use our platform, and we're going to give you all this information and make sure that you can actually start making money.
I love it. That's super interesting, and going through the report, like everything you actually mentioned, a lot of things. Everything you mentioned before, everyone can see that with the methodology, the risk score explanation. So yeah, I mean that's fantastic. Thank you very much for taking the time to explain everything.
No, always, Flav, and it is so important, right? That's why I'm so passionate about it, because like I said, it was never, when I started in the whole Web3, it was more like that anarchistic kind of like, I want to disrupt the whole thing. Let's get rid of this. But suddenly now understanding, I think, much more what is coming. This is why actually Pixelpai, just to give you maybe a little bit, is we are using a lot of AI into this, right? Because we have automatic kind of like, AI agents and this whole new hype of these kind of things, right? But also it's not only payment, and it's actually the pie is also making the pie bigger, because we are now disrupting actually what I say, the financial aspect of it, because a lot of these studios don't actually see the money that the user is spending in order to get in and get out of Web3, right? So it's often costing maybe 10% actually to move money in, and suddenly coming in and do something and come out again. That's a lot of money, and in order to reduce that also, and we actually wanted to disrupt that both from the studio point of view, but also helping the gamers and the users, making it much cheaper. And I think now creating new revenue streams going back to the studios, because they are struggling with user acquisition and all these other parts already now. But suddenly, if we can all work together, and just because we are improving the system itself, the financial system, we are now generating new revenue streams and kickbacks back to the studio. So it's not them just like creating these, what I call sometimes very, very creative concepts, but actually now, just because they actually then will value brand loyalty and take care of their consumers and really try to build on the most important thing, their community, we can actually share a bigger pie, all of us. So I think that is a very kind of like that. That's what I really am so focused about, right? So yeah.
Okay. So I don't know. It seems like obviously compliance will be a big thing in 2025, just for the fact of what we see in the US. Although I know that for a lot of people, because we anticipate the fact that it's going to be easier for any companies based in the US to operate as a blockchain company. So obviously for a game company as well. Maybe not. Would love to have your opinion on that, because all the
that's a political view suddenly, right? That can be quickly.
Okay, so let's turn that into, what do you expect to come in 2025 in terms of compliance, and what kind of role you would like to play in this?
I think especially first of all, we're going to see now Mika has come into a full effect, right? So good and bad, but at least there's a framework now. I think from a smaller studio, it is really it is I'll say it's a blocker for a lot of them, because they suddenly see into something new they need to learn, because they really want to embrace the whole Web3, but also suddenly being maybe regulation is actually forcing them to look outside of Europe and moving into, British Virgin Islands and all these kind of, like, in on paper shady places, right? But this is what regulation is forcing them to take, some radical, I think, decisions where ideally they just want to be compliant. They want to pay their taxes. They want to do things the right way. This is really the feedback that I'm getting. But I feel like the regulation and the demand for regulatory capital and these licenses I'm fearing that that's going to push them out into some decisions that might not be the best way for them to do it. But with that framework for the bigger companies, they have the money to basically comply, right? So I actually think we will see a bigger difference in within the gaming studios, like the AAA and the AA studios, and that will be an even bigger divider between the 90% of the smaller studios, because they don't have that kind of money. And this is exactly why I want to help them. And I think the stable coin is going to push very, very hard on this one. And I think that's going to be a main adoption around with the compliance this year. But I have a very strong kind of like relationship to Japan and especially Asia and some of the other ones. And they actually really like that in Europe we now have a framework, because now they know exactly this is how I need to operate within and be compliant. And I think this is where we then in Europe have a super big advantage now, is actually providing them with the tools. So whatever you come from outside, if you want to comply and be compliant, then you need to make sure that you actually are operating within the European laws, which I think is a massive advantage. So I see it both ways, right? But I want to make sure that the smaller studios are actually not forgotten in this one, because otherwise I feel like the gaming studio is going to have it even tougher years, right? And I think they're struggling enough right now, how it is. So
you see in Europe is coming. So we have Mika, transparency and visibility to what you could do, which is good in a sense, especially for bigger studio with more money. But you're going to see some more risk of innovation operating in Europe for the indie games who try to innovate and will likely to either use your solution, your work with you, or either decide on focusing on other areas. That's your take.
Yeah, because I think Web2 studios are, of course, first of all, they are very kind of like, why would we move into this one, right? I think now the struggle they have had with user acquisition, and actually suddenly there's a lifetime value, there's bigger upsides now with free. Now it's not a discussion anymore about, of course, you should own your assets. Of course, privacy matters. And of course that it's not about the environment anymore, because everybody's actually trying to do this the most, and actually I think a more energy efficient way than traditional gaming is, right? So I think all these kind of like USPs are very clear, but they still need to be convinced about removing risk, because at the end of the day it's about risk, right? They need to now, okay, because and this is my maybe my little bit of prayer to the whole ecosystem, is that I'm a little bit scared about Web3 in general, because everyone, like every layer 1 and layer 2, are trying to advocate for their own, right? Like, you need to use Arbitrum, or you need to use Base, or you need to use Ethereum and all that. I get that. I totally get it. But if we want to survive and really get the mass adoption as an ecosystem, we need systems that can talk together and actually work on asset class and all these kind of things, come together as a proper foundation. I think this is where BGA has such a big influence and a very, very important role. And I know Sebastian and the whole team behind you guys are working tirelessly on this one. And it's just so important, because I'm sitting with companies every single day who's saying, okay, I really want to move into this space, but what network should I choose? But you shouldn't think about these kind of things. You should just see that the technology itself give you a lot of opportunities, and we can help you operate. And we actually are chain agnostic. We don't care. Like, if you want to deploy your game on both, let's just say Hedera, Ethereum, Polygon, Base, Arbitrum at the same time, we can support that. Here you go. Like, it's really where the community is and where the sales is and where's the activity. And you don't want to have that blocker in mind when you're choosing, right? Because then you would just say, it's a big risk, and I need to now to have this smart contract developer and this one and this one and this one. And you're just adding overheads to your pressured economy already, right? So we just wanted to kind of like,
Yeah,
that's
and it
how I see
doesn't
it.
help. No, I agree, totally agree with you. And it doesn't help when you have ecosystem like that's actually trying to grasp the attention from the game developers in different ways, and with grant program or different opportunities for collaboration within the ecosystem. So you have so many differences between them and how they could actually approach game developers that sometimes as a game company, you need so much education about what you should and could do, which is a little bit of a nightmare. I agree with you. So
Yes.
I don't want to use too much of your time, and actually it was
No.
super
Like so
interesting to
I love it. Like I said, I always have opinions, right? So
yeah, and like again, really value your time and the fact that you in the last minute say yes for this live, because I think like it was super valuable for me at first, but also for everyone. And obviously in the BGA, this is for myself, obviously helping the BGA members, but obviously for the BGA, anytime you have a new release of the platform, the V2, V3, we're gonna love to see that on the demo day we have, but also offline. We won't be at PGC this year, and I'm sorry because I feel like you're gonna be there, especially with Tony being in London, if I'm not mistaken.
yes.
But we're gonna see each other for sure. I hope so for GDC, maybe in San Francisco.
Absolutely. Like I said, I'm all over the place always, right? So and right now it's just building because there's so many things that needs to be kind of like built in, and especially with some of the gaming studios we are co-creating with. So we are making sure that this is not just built, you know, again by us, but also working together with companies that actually wants to have the freedom and have that flexibility of, you know, order that smart contract automatically and removing the risk and friction and all these kind of things. And this is exactly what we are building towards, right? So we will have plenty of stuff to show. Don't worry, Flav.
Plenty of stuff to show, and to plenty of story as well. Like I don't say that so much to the members, but removing the barriers of entry that you actually explained very well for this hour. Let me know about everything which is happening on your side, so we can capitalize on this and produce some content on our side with the BGA, offline with the BGA magazine, but also online as well, because it was valuable for me to go into the tool. Is going to be also valuable for everyone to understand how you helped actually game developers and game companies. So very excited. Again, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate that.
My pleasure. And like I said to all BGA members or anybody out there listening, right? You know, like if you really want to come in, it's free to use, right? You know, come in because we want to give back to this community. Otherwise, we don't grow. So please, kind of like, you know, any kind of input, any kind of feature people would like to see. We're very open for this kind of thing. So really, kind of like that's just my, I think, last 2 cents. So thank you so much.
No problem, and I would say the same. If anyone want to learn more and have some question to Morten, come to me first for sure, and I would love to ask any questions I need to ask to Morten and the team. So thanks again for Morten for that. I wish you the best for PGC, and I will see you very soon anyway.
Definitely. Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.